Hey, what's going on there, guys? Welcome back to another Magic the Gathering product opening video. Today we're going to be taking a look at one of the coolest products that Wizards of the Coast has to offer for players and collectors alike, and that is another one of the From the Vault box sets. Now, each time that Wizards of the Coast comes out with one of these box sets, they're going to have a certain theme that they want to get across to the people that are buying the set. And in the past, we've seen stuff like Tribal Dragons, where it highlights some of the most awesome and cool dragons that have been in Magic the Gathering's history. And then we've also seen sets where it was a collection of cards that have been banned in Magic the Gathering, and the cards were just so broken and so awesome that Wizards of the Coast had to just be like, hey, we have to ban this card because it's just so good. But the set that we have here today is from the Vault 20, and it features 20 of the most influential cards in tournament history for Magic the Gathering. And it is going to take a look at the past 20 years, and each card is going to correspond to a given year where that card was just so good for tournament history that that card stood out, and players that played at that time could recognize it easily as being like, oh, well, yeah, that card was definitely one of the cards that defined that given year of tournament play. So we are going to take a look at this product here. We're going to take a look at the contents and all the cool stuff that you get inside. I was able to purchase this at my local card shop, Top Deck Cards and Games in Bethel Park, PA. And I was able to buy it for $174.99 plus tax, which seems like a steep cost, but you guys have to remember that these products will sell for like $200 online when they're first coming out, and they only increase in price from that point on. And if you're able to find them for any cheaper, definitely go for it. It's a really cool product to have, and it's something that is going to go up in price as time goes on. But this is one of those products that I really enjoy opening up on the channel and taking a look at and having the cards in my collection because they're just ultimately really cool and they really get across a unique type of message. So we'll take a look at it here. So it has a really cool design like all of the rest of the From the Vault sets have. It has a really sleek looking box. So it has the contents and all the cards on the back here. And for the contents, it says 20 premium foil cards, including 9 with new art, an exclusive spin down life counter, which is awesome if you decide to use it for competitive play or just play in general, and you can keep track of your life total. And you also get a collector's guide. The nice thing about these boxes is that they are reusable. They just have a clasp that is magnetized there, so you can easily open it and close it. There's no like tearing the product or anything like that, and it flips open here where we can see the sets of cards that are displayed, and it says From the Vault 20 on the inside there. So we'll open this up and we'll slide out the cards and take a look at what awesome stuff Wizards of the Coast has packaged for us. So one of the cool things that they insert with these sets each time they have one of the From the Vault sets is a guide to why the cards were actually put in there and what their significance is. So in this case, it's going to be talking about why the cards were significant at their time and what time they were actually significant. Corresponding to the given years of tournament history. So for you guys that actually purchase the product, you can go through and read that. I'm not going to sit on camera and read it out to you guys, but it's definitely something cool to look over whenever you actually decide to purchase one of these types of products and you don't understand why the cards were that good. So we'll open this up. We have our spin down life counter here. And it has the 20 symbol, which is actually pretty cool. I definitely like that a lot. So we'll put that up here off to the side, and we'll take a look at the cards. So one of the highlight cards out of this set is definitely going to be Jace the Mind Sculptor. Jace the Mind Sculptor is one of the, well, it's been claimed as the best Planeswalker ever printed, and for good reason. It was probably one of the first cards to get banned for a long time in Standard. I think it was like 2003 or 2004. the last time a card was banned in the standard format, and then Jace came around and he just wrecked face, and they had to ban him along with Stoneforge Mystic. And he was just such a dominant force in Caw-Blade. But he's still seeing tremendous play in a Legacy, and for a good reason. He's just an awesome Planeswalker, and to have a foil one is pretty cool. It's no World Wake foil, but it's still really cool to have one. So we'll take a look at the Jace, the Mind Sculptor pack here, and the contents inside. So we'll open this up. It actually has that little tear thing on the side that we can use. And for you guys that are wondering what I'm actually going to do with these, all of these cards are actually going to be going into my cube, because I actually own regular copies of all of these cards, but it's nice to have foil versions that can go into my cube and they can just pimp it out a little bit. So we have our Jace the Mind Sculptor here, just looking really awesome with that premium foil work to him. 3 loyalty, 4 cost. One of the first Planeswalkers to ever get printed with 4 abilities. And his +2 is look at the top card of target player's library. You may put that card onto the bottom of that player's library. His 0 ability is a Brainstorm, which is draw 3 cards and then put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. -1 is return target creature to its owner's hand. And -12 is just tremendous, where we get to exile all cards from target player's library. Then that player shuffles his or her hand into his or her library, which is just nuts. So Jace definitely has a good reason for being in this set. We have Green Sun Zenith, so it's a sorcery for X and 1 green. Search our library for a green creature card with converted mana cost X or less, put it onto the battlefield, and then we get to shuffle Green Suns into its owner's library. So Green Sun Zenith is one of those cards that was just really good back a few seasons ago, where people were able to play it in Wolf Run Ramp, which was a deck that revolved around red and green, and it played cards like Primeval Titan. And you were able to use Green Sun Zenith to either fetch up Primeval Titan whenever it got into like the late game and you had 7 mana open, or even early game you could still search for things like Birds of Paradise, and then you could shuffle your Green Suns into your deck and still be able to find it later on and be able to use it. So Green Suns was just an awesome card, and it's still just such a tremendous card to have, even if you're just going for like casual Magic and just playing at the kitchen table. We have Kessig Wolfrun, which is another really strong and iconic card that has been played ever since it was printed in Innistrad. So it's a land with a really extreme ability. It taps for generic mana, but that's not quite it. Its second ability with X amount of mana, 1 red and 1 green, tap target creature gets +X/+0 and trample until the end of the turn, was definitely what set it up and above all of the other utility lands that we had for the standard season whenever Innistrad rolled out and Innistrad block was complete. Kessig Wolfrun was another one of those cards that was played in Wolfrun Ramp, and it was able to either just make all of the creatures that you had such a huge threat whenever they were swinging in, because you had a lot of mana open from playing cards like Primeval Titan. And it could also allow you to interact with Inkmoth Nexus and defeat your opponent by just getting them to 10 poison counters, as opposed to winning with just traditional damage. So Kessig Wolfrun and Wolfrun Ramp in general were just 2 extreme things that were being played back during that season. We have Dark Ritual, which is an awesome card that is still being played in Legacy. It's an instant speed card for 1 black, and we add triple black to our mana pool. This is just one of those cards that is awesome for combo-based decks, where you just get to accelerate along, and you can really easily play out combos like Entomb, Exhume, and there's just a lot of really unique things that you can have go on with Dark Ritual that shouldn't be happening as early. Back in the day, being able to have Dark Ritual was just really nice, and the acceleration was really perfect for what Black wanted to do a lot quicker. We have Swords to Plowshares, which Swords to Plowshares is pretty much the best removal spell that you have for white, and pretty much one of the best removal spells in general that you have in the game of Magic the Gathering. But it's an instant speed card for 1 white, and we exile target creature. Its controller gains life to its power, and Swords to Plowshares is one of those cards that's just such good removal that the drawback to it really can't be compared to any other removal that we have. And for the majority of players that have been playing for a long time, they'll agree that Swords is just, it's really, really good for a lot of different formats. And again, it's another card that is just seeing so much play in Legacy, and it's just such a really tremendous card to have, to be able to just keep your opponent from trying to do what they ultimately want to do with their creatures, no matter what size they are. We have a Chainer's Edict, which is a sorcery speed card for 2, 1 generic and 1 black, and it forces target player to sacrifice a creature. And it also has a flashback for 7. So Chainer's Edict is awesome because it both allows you to force your opponent to sack a creature really early on in the game, but it also allows you to use it really late in the game as well, and be able to just get 2 uses out of the card. Flashback spells always have a awesome amount of value to them, where it's not that your opponent has to dodge it once, but they are going to have to dodge it twice, and they kind of have to play carefully whenever they're playing around a opponent that has flashback spells. So that's the first stack that we have. Now let's go into the Hymn to Turok stack here. And Hymn to Turok is still one of those cards that's just really awesome for being able to disrupt what your opponent's doing in terms of cards that they have in their hand. So we'll take a look at it up close here. So Hymn to Turok is going to force target player to discard 2 cards at random for double black at a sorcery speed. And Hymn to Turok has some really cool new artwork to it, but the biggest thing about Hymn to Turok is the fact that it's one of the premier discard spells that Magic the Gathering has to offer, because it's going to force your opponent to discard cards at random, so they don't get to pick and choose which ones they are just going to willingly give away with having to discard them. But Hymn to Turok, definitely because of that amount of randomness to what your opponent's discarding, can definitely disrupt a lot of different things that are going on. And again, it's another card that is still being played to this day, and well, for good reason. We have Fyndhorn Elves. So the Elves are compared to cards that we see nowadays, like Llanowar Elves, that newer players would be probably more familiar with, but it's a 1/1 for 1 green, and it just has the typical tap and add 1 green mana to your mana pool. And back in the day, being able to accelerate along with outlets like creatures that tap for mana, it was just pretty much key, and it would allow decks of a variety of different themes to be able to just get into the bigger and more fat things in their deck a lot earlier than your opponent could expect or be able to deal with them, which is definitely something that makes the Elves a really cool card to have in your deck. We have Impulse, which is a instant speed 2-cost card, 1 generic and 1 blue. Look at the top 4 cards of your library, put 1 of them into your hand and the rest onto the bottom of your library in any order. Back in the days when Impulse was being played in tournaments, Impulse was just one of those ways where you could get pieces to your deck that you really needed to see and things that you really wanted. It could really easily just kind of dig you out of a situation when there were specific things that you wanted, but you were just kind of a little bit short of having them. So Impulse was a great way to be able to just kind of have a small outlet of being able to search for them. We have Wall of Blossoms. So Wall of Blossoms is a 0/4 for 2, 1 generic and 1 green with Defender. And whenever it enters the battlefield, we get to draw a card. The cool thing about Wall of Blossoms is that it's a card that is a defender like Wall of Omens, which again, like newer players would probably be more familiar with, or at least players that have been playing for some time, because it's been a little while since Wall of Omens has been out in formats. But Wall of Blossoms is a cool card because it offers the same thing that Wall of Omens does. And for green, it's a nice way to have a blocker that is going to ultimately thwart any really aggressive strategies that are trying to get out there. And it also graces you with the benefit of being able to draw a card as well. The next card that we have here is Thran Dynamo, which is a 4-cost artifact which taps for 3 mana. And a lot of players that play EDH will be pretty familiar with this card, either from having other players play it against you or you yourself playing it in your deck. But this is one of the best cards that you have for being able to accelerate your mana just really early on. And it's just one of those key cards whenever it comes to being able to push yourself a little bit ahead of what your opponent's trying to do. One of the cool things about Thran Dynamo is it's one of those mana producing cards, so if you're able to destroy your opponent's lands with cards like Death Cloud or something like that, then you still have mana producers that'll produce at least generic mana in the terms of Thran Dynamo. But Thran Dynamo is just another one of those really cool and unique cards that I'm not surprised to see in this type of a set. We have Tanglewire, which is an artifact for 3 with fading 4. And at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player taps an untapped artifact, creature, or land she controls for each fade counter on Tanglewire. Now, Tanglewire is interesting because it allows you to just kind of stall out what your opponent's trying to do and just kind of keep a lock on the game while you're trying to build up combos or interact with certain aspects of your deck that aren't quite online yet. One of the cool things about Tanglewire was that it was played back in the Tinker days, where you were able to just get rid of Tanglewire after the fade counters were all gone off of it, and then you could find things like Phyrexian Processor, and it was just one of those really cool and unique cards back then. And even still now, this is one of the cards that I really like playing in my cube, just because it's just so much fun being able to stall out games based on the fading counters that are on it, and ultimately just kind of throw your opponent off of what they're trying to do, especially like earlier on. It's really going to stall out the way that things are playing. And then we have Fact or Fiction, which is a card that has been reprinted a few times, especially in like the Commander sets. But Fact or Fiction is an instant speed card for 4, and we get to reveal the top 5 cards of our library. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. Put 1 pile into your hand and the other into your graveyard. Now, with Fact or Fiction, of course you can interact with like your graveyard based on what your opponent is going to choose, but ultimately you are going to get some benefit out of the piles that your opponent is going to create for you. And just being able to select and choose what you need in that given situation is going to give you some advantage for the given board state that your opponent is put you in. And you can just kind of squeak your way through situations at that point and try to find what the best possible pile is to kind of correlate with what's going on in the game. And then we have our last set here of cards. So let's take a look at it here. So for our last set, we have Akroma's Vengeance. So Akroma's Vengeance is a sorcery speed card for 6, and it's going to allow us to destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. And it also has cycling for 3, where we can pay 3 mana, discard the card, and we can draw a card. So back in the Onslaught days, Akroma's Vengeance was cool with all the cycle abilities that you had going around, but it was also a really powerful card just because it allowed us to destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments on top of that. It's just really primo removal to have at a sorcery speed. But the fact that you could cycle it away if you needed to draw more cards on the spot was definitely really cool. And again, it's another one of those cards that works its way timeless amounts of times into players' cubes just because it's just really so powerful. It allows you 2 modes of either being able to use it against your opponent, or if it's not relevant at all to use it against your opponent, you can at least have the advantage of being able to cycle it out and draw cards and potentially get into things that may actually help you in the given situation if you're packing them in your deck. We have Gilded Lotus with some cool new artwork as well. It's an artifact for 5 and it taps for 3 mana of any one color to your mana pool, so kind of like Thran Dynamo. It was another cool card that adds mana, and it is actually going to allow us to fix a little bit as well. It's another card that is really popular in EDH because it not only allows you to ramp, but it also allows you to fix mana as well. And one of the popular things back in the time of Gilded Lotus being popular was playing it around Key, Voltaic Key that is, and it could just allow you to create this enormous amount of mana that could be spent. And Gilded Lotus, it's just really awesome. It was also reprinted in, what was it, M13, I believe? Yeah, it was M13 that Gilded Lotus was reprinted. And it's just a cool card to have to be able to just kind of push your decks along, whether you need fixing or you need ramping. But for 5 mana, it's a pretty reasonable price to pay for being able to add 3 more mana in the following turns. So the next card that we have is Ink Eyes, Servant of Oni. So Ink Eyes is a 5/4 for 6 with ninjutsu for 5, and whenever Ink Eyes deals combat damage to a player, we may put target creature card from that player's graveyard onto the battlefield under our control, and we also get to regenerate Ink Eyes for 2. So Ink Eyes, again, is another one of those really fan favorite cards for EDH, but ultimately it's really awesome because it's just so flavorful with ninjutsu to be able to get this card onto the battlefield and attacking your opponent whenever you bounce back your unblockable attack or unblocked attacker to your hand with ninjutsu and put it onto the battlefield for an even cheaper cost than what it would take to just cast it for its regular casting cost. But Ink Eyes is awesome because it allows you to kind of interact with what your opponent has in their grave, and if you're able to remove creatures from their play and kill them off, or force your opponent to put cards from the top of their library into their grave and then interact with their graveyard. Ultimately, there's a variety of different ways that you can just kind of interact with Ink Eyes, but having the regenerate cost for 2 definitely makes it a card that really packs a punch and is hard to get rid of. We have Char, which is a instant speed card for 3, and it deals 4 damage to target creature or player and 2 damage to you, which may seem like a somewhat inconvenient drawback, but at the time where Char was being played in competitive Magic, it was a pretty okay thing to have, and it was actually one of the best removal spells and one of the best burn spells that you could possibly have at that time for the 3 mana, where taking 2 damage actually really didn't even mean much, just being able to deal 4 to target creature or player. And ultimately it's just a nice removal spell for a variety of different creatures, and if you're just trying to burn out your opponent, taking the 2 damage isn't going to mean a whole lot to you at all. We have Venser, Shape Savant, so he's a 2/2 for 4 with Flash, and whenever he enters the battlefield, return target spell or permanent to its owner's hand. Now, the interesting thing about Venser is that he still gets around any cards that are like uncounterable, or any things that are on your opponent's battlefield that you really don't want them to have. You can bounce back creatures, lands, enchantments, artifacts, and if your opponent's casting a spell, he can also bounce that spell back to your opponent's hand and not allow it to resolve. And he's pretty cool. It was actually pretty cool to see Venser printed as a Planeswalker in Scars of Mirrodin after having played with him as a legendary creature, but definitely a really, really cool card. We have Chameleon Colossus, so it's a 4/4 for 4 with Changeling and protection from black, and for 4 mana it gets +X/+X until the end of the turn, where X is its power. Now, the Colossus is really cool because of the Changeling part of the card, where it's every creature type at all times. It allows it to be played in tribal-based decks. So if you have any tribal cards that will grant any type of effects to your creature, any static effects to your creature, or any buffs or anything like that, the Chameleon Colossus is going to benefit from it. Protection from black keeps it from being able to be targeted by like black removal spells. It can't be blocked by like black creatures, or if your opponent's attacking with like a black creature, you're able to just block it and not have the Colossus take any damage from it. But for the 4 mana, allowing it to just get this enormous buff in its power and toughness is pretty good for the mana that you're able to put in. So the last card that we have is Cruel Ultimatum, and it's a sorcery speed card for double blue, triple black, and double red. And it's going to force target opponent to sacrifice a creature, discard 3 cards, and then lose 5 life. We then are going to be able to return a creature card from our graveyard to our hand, draw 3 cards, and then gain 5 life. So for the extreme amount of mana that you actually have to put into this card, it actually packs a really enormous punch to whatever your opponent's trying to do. And it's definitely a really awesome card to be able to just end games with, and that's exactly the perfect thing that Cruel Ultimatum is for, and it's going to end the game in a pretty cruel way, especially when you're playing it in Legacy. So that is the From the Vault 20 set, so we'll just quickly go over the cards that you get inside of here. So we have Cruel Ultimatum, Chameleon Colossus, we have Venser Shape Savant, we have Char, Ink Eyes, Servant of Oni, Gilded Lotus, we have Achroma's Vengeance, Fact or Fiction, Tangle Wire, Thran Dynamo, Wall of Blossoms, Impulse, we have Findhorn Elves, Hymn to Turok, Chainer's Edict, we have Swords to Plowshares, we have Dark Ritual, Kessig Wolfrun, Green Sun Zenith, and Jace the freaking Mind Sculptor. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to thumbs up it and subscribe for more Magic the Gathering content, unboxing videos, and other videos. Until next time, guys, have yourselves a wonderful, fun-filled Magic the Gathering day.